A late-night drive
Miss?
takes a tragic turn.
It shocked him. He realized he had hit a person.
He was just horrified. He thought he'd killed her.
But an unexpected discovery suggests something more sinister.
She was already dead before that car ever came near her. Now it's a murder.
The reality is we've got to start all over again and work backwards.
As rookie detective Kenda works his second homicide case, he realizes things aren't always what they seem.
And the initial thought I had was panic. Like, how are we going to solve this?
Just stop!
Every case is difficult because every case is a mystery. The journey begins with the first step. So you take the first step.
There's one thing that never changes: murder. A life has been taken. Their stories are now my stories. I never know where a case is going to lead, but I'll never stop until it's solved. Somebody has to look out for the victim.
If you kill, I will find you.
Academy Boulevard. It's one of the main commercial thoroughfares in Colorado Springs. But after 2 a.m. on a weeknight, it's nearly deserted.
Larry Shanks had spent the evening with his girlfriend, Cheryl Levada, and now he's driving her home.
They're chatting, they're having fun, flirting, listening to the radio.
So, I was thinking about having a get-together this weekend.
Yeah, I like that. Who were you thinking?
The speed limit along this stretch of road is 50 miles an hour. They were probably doing a little more than that.
Maybe Jeremy and Marcia, and my sister.
As Larry's driving, he's approaching another car and instinctively goes to pass it.
No, my dad had that car when I was a little kid. Oh my God! I think he just hit somebody.
What?
It's morning in the CSPD Investigations Bureau, and rookie homicide detective Joe Kenda is keeping his nose to the grindstone. He's been on the job less than a year.
At that time, I was one of only a handful of people that had a college education. There was a policeman. So they called me.
Hey, college boy. Got some homework here for you to do.
Thanks.
At this point, I've solved only one attempted homicide case where someone shot 2 people in a convenience store. That got me the job in homicide, but now I had to prove to everyone I deserved to stay here.
And when you're through with that, I need you to start calling all the pawn shops in the area. See if anybody's bought a 9mm in the last couple of weeks.
I'll get right on it.
For the most part, I've been spending my time helping out the seasoned detectives while I learn the ropes.
Make your professor proud.
But today, Kenda's boss, Sergeant Ken Bayans, has bigger plans for the rookie detective.
Hey, Kenda.
Yes, Sergeant.
I might have a case for you. You up to it?
Absolutely, sir.
Sergeant Baines was my sergeant in the Crimes Against Persons unit, as it was called at that time. I thought he was a very smart guy, the kind of person I wanted to be, and I tried to emulate him.
Young woman died, hit by a car. Traffic unit investigated, and they originally thought it was an accident, but they wanted us to take a look just to make sure.
This was my second case as a homicide detective. I solved that first one, but now I had that nagging feeling that maybe on that occasion, I just got lucky.
When did the accident occur?
4 days ago. Here are the reports from the crime scene investigation.
And who's the victim?
Her name was Wanda Murray.
When you look at the initial file, you learn very little. You know this woman's name is Wanda Pearl Murray. She's 29 years old, and she is currently deceased.
A local woman, divorced, lived alone. She had a couple of daughters, but they lived with their father down in Texas. The traffic investigators thought it looked pretty cut and dried.
On the night of the accident, traffic investigators questioned the driver who hit Wanda. A man named Charles Clark.
It just happened so fast. I didn't mean to do it.
You're gonna be okay. Just walk me through what happened.
Okay, I was just heading home. The road was pretty deserted.
Somebody's sure in a hurry.
So Charles Clark, driving on Academy, has this car pass him, and he realizes it's going pretty fast. And he thought, I wonder if I'm going the speed limit. So he looks down for a second, and then, like, wham, he's hit something.
It shocked him. He looked in the rearview mirror, immediately stopped his car, slamming on the brakes, and realized he had hit a person.
God. Oh my God. Miss? 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 You okay?
That really would be pretty close to your worst nightmare, to look around and realize it was a human. And clearly, you ran over her.
I swear I never saw her. I just looked at my speedometer for a second and...
Tell me, have you had anything to drink tonight?
No, nothing.
Would you mind to give us a breath sample?
Sure, yeah.
All right.
People don't really know this, but breathalyzers have been around since the invention of the automobile.
Keep going, keep going.
And even in the 1970s, they were sophisticated enough to tell you with near certainty whether or not a person had been drinking. And Mr. Clark most definitely was not.
After administering the breathalyzer, traffic investigators checked to see if the physical evidence matched Charles Clark's statement.
It looks more like he ran over her rather than hitting her and striking her down.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any damage to the bumper.
And though Charles Clark hadn't been drinking at the time of the accident, the same can't be said for the victim.
Boy, you smell that?
Yeah, she hit the bottle hard tonight.
Might seem unbelievable, but you can actually smell alcohol in human blood at a death scene.
According to the crime scene report, a trail of blood and skin tissue led up to where the victim's mangled body lay.
I'd say she got hit over there and dragged all the way down to here.
Everything about this crime scene said accident.
Skid marks clearly indicated that he stopped after he struck the victim, which would tell us he didn't see her beforehand.
Auto meeting pedestrian almost always is an intoxicated pedestrian who staggers into the roadway, so they assume this woman is drunk, trips and falls, collapses. And is immediately struck by a car.
Charles Clark was not charged in this case. The physical evidence showed that he did not do anything wrong.
As far as the police are concerned, the matter's closed.
It looks like your standard auto versus pedestrian. What do you need homicide to do?
All I know is when the coroner's office looked at the body, it raised a red flag.
So we should go see what's up, right, Sarge?
You got it.
So we go to the El Paso County morgue because our best source now is Dr. Urich.
Hey, fellas.
But the rookie detective isn't prepared for what's in store.
Forgive me if I don't shake your hands.
It's the first time I had ever seen a body that had been autopsied. The skull removed, the organs removed. It was startling.
You all right, detective?
Yeah, boss. All good.
Don't worry. You'll get used to it.
There's an old expression in homicide that you go from being a new guy to an old guy in about 15 minutes, and that was true in that case.
Well, here she is, Miss Wanda Murray. I'm still waiting on some test results, but I noticed something very odd when I was going through her organs.
What's that?
Well, let me back up a little bit. She was run over, right? Severe injuries to the outside, severe injuries to the inside, too.
She had extensive tears to her lungs, her heart, her liver when the car hit her. But the exception was that she didn't have any bleeding associated with those injuries.
Oh. And what's that mean?
It means that those injuries were caused post-mortem.
So in other words, she was already dead before that car ever came near her. Well, my. I'm a brand new homicide detective, and we are involved in an extremely unusual case. So now we have to discover what it is that made Wanda Pearl Murray wind up in a morgue table.
Now, we can't establish an exact cause of death until we get all the lab results back. But everything's pointing toward asphyxiation. Now, there could be any number of causes for that.
The medical examiner believed that Wanda actually died of possibly strangulation or blunt force head trauma, and that the motor vehicle accident happened afterwards.
It's your case, detective. How do you want to handle this?
But because I was young and I was new, I was nervous. I was very concerned about making some mistake I couldn't recover from.
I'd say we need to reinvestigate the accident scene. Maybe it'll tell us how she really died. At least how she got there in the first place.
Let's go do this.
All right, thanks, Doc.
Thanks, Doc. And the initial thought I had was a little bit of panic. Like, how are we going to solve this? So Sergeant Baines and myself and other detectives arrive at the scene of this accident on Academy Boulevard. 4 days later in the daytime.
It hasn't rained since the accident, leaving stains of dried blood spread across the pavement.
Hey, Sarge. I got a bank statement with her name on it.
We must have missed something. It was really dark outside.
So you stand there and look at this and you think, you know, this was somebody's life. And all that remains is some bloodstains and a bank statement. Kind of sad.
Hey, Kenda.
Yes, Sarge.
But as a homicide detective, you learn how to set all of that aside. You have a job to do.
You any good with blood evidence?
Yes, sir.
Come on over and check it out. Let me know what it tells you.
The evidence shows her body was lying there, partially in the traffic lane when the car ran over her. Was she walking down the street when she encountered her killer and was strangled? 4 days later, it's impossible to say.
However, the surrounding area gives Kenda an idea. He knows this stretch of road is basically deserted around 2 a.m.
No possibility of any witnesses having seen anything. The perfect place to dump a body.
Hey, Sarge. I think our victim was strangled somewhere else and dumped here. I think the killer panicked, pushed her out of the vehicle and sped off, which is why she was partially in the traffic lane.
It's an interesting theory. Now we just need to find out who'd want to do something like that to our victim. Thanks. I really appreciate you coming out.
Thanks.
We have no idea, but at the present time, somebody on planet Earth made this happen. We need to narrow that down a little bit.
Hoping to learn whatever they can about Wanda Murray, the detectives head to her last known address, the home of Reverend James McMurn and his wife, Mary.
Come on in. I just made some tea. Would either of you gentlemen like some?
No, thank you, ma'am.
None for me, thanks.
The Reverend James McMurn and his wife, Mary, were pillars of the community.
So what can I help you with in regards to Wanda?
Ma'am, we hate to tell you, but Wanda was killed in a traffic accident.
So we talked to Mary and said why we were there, and she was very distressed, of course, by this news.
Oh, Wanda. That girl's life was nothing but misery. It just seems like she could never catch a break.
Wanda was the classic example of a lost childhood. She had a baby when she was still in high school. She dropped out of school.
Come on, babies. Come on. Come on.
According to Mary, hardship followed Wanda through her 20s.
It's all right. Go ahead and get in the car. Come on.
Wanda was separated, divorced from her husband, who kept the children.
In.
That would indicate that she was having some problems because back in that era, courts routinely appointed custody to the mother.
How did she come to live here with you and your husband?
The Lord brought her to us.
She'd actually done some criminal activity, which landed her in jail.
She's done her time for shoplifting. And the Reverend and I met her at one of the inmates ministry programs we ran for women. We saw such a good heart in Wanda. I got some blankets here for you. Gets really chilly in here at nighttime.
They decided to sponsor her for her parole and actually give her a place to stay because she didn't have anything.
Thank you so much, Mary. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. We're happy to help. Just make yourself at home.
Mary said when Wanda first came there were no issues at all.
But no one would hire her with that criminal conviction. It really wore on her. I think that's how she lost her faith.
How so?
She had problems with alcohol, and when she was drinking, she started having some very wide mood swings.
It was frightening.
Did something to your eyes, right? In learning one of the most difficult lessons
Wanda. What in the world?
I'm just trying to make a sandwich. Can I eat in peace?
Can I make you a sandwich? Just stop, okay?
Mary says that she would go from being aggressive to very quiet, to not saying or doing anything.
Just let me eat in peace. Just leave me alone.
I've never seen anybody react like that to alcohol. At any rate, we tried to help her, but after a few months, we just asked her to leave.
Do you know where she went?
She said Wanda had been staying with a party by the name of Luther Brown.
Luther was a lieutenant in the Air Force living out at Peterson Air Force Base.
So Luther becomes instantly interesting. He is someone connected to her that we didn't know about. We talked to Mary. Now it's time to talk to Luther.
Back at the station, Kenda pulls records on Lieutenant Luther Brown.
Let me know when you track down that witness.
Sure thing.
Hey, Sarge, just take a look at this. Looks like the military police responded domestic between our victim and the boyfriend.
Really?
Murder is always emotion overcoming judgment. It's rage expressed in violence.
Baynes and Kenda begin to wonder, what if a domestic disturbance between Wanda and Luther turned deadly?
He panics, he throws her out of a car. Who knows? As is true in every relationship, it takes two to tango. Does that mean he killed her? No. Does it mean he could have? Of course. We're investigating the death of 29-year-old Wanda Murray. We discovered she has a boyfriend named Luther Brown, and we're really interested in finding out what he has to say for himself.
Thanks for coming in so quickly.
No problem. I actually can't believe she's dead.
So our question to him is simple. Tell us about Wanda, and tell us about you and Wanda.
Well, we met a few months ago, and I actually thought she was something special, but it went all south after that.
He noted that they had a very volatile relationship. There were times where they fought. Wanda drank. When she drank, she had a Jekyll Hyde kind of attitude.
He's dealing with that same personality that Mary, the Reverend's wife, describes. Aggressive, passive. Aggressive, passive. Very odd, very strange.
And then one night she just went crazy.
He said she even attacked me with a knife.
Get out of my way, Luther.
No.
I'm not.
No, you're not driving my car. You're drunk. You're gonna get somebody killed. Cut it out. Stop. Whoa. Stop it.
Give me my key. Who are you calling?
Security.
Luther.
I need you guys at 13C.
Give me.
Right away. Thank you.
What are you doing? Like, I just want you safe. Like, what are you doing?
He called security. He was not gonna mess around and see if she was serious about it.
What's going on with you?
So, what happened after that?
Well, the MPs came. They made sure they calmed her down. And then they left.
Luther paints himself in the best light, but we've become alarmed about the disturbance factor.
So, Luther, when was the last time you saw Wanda?
It was about 5 or 6 days ago. I couldn't take it anymore, so I broke up with her.
He kicked her out of his apartment the day before her death. Interesting.
And where were you the night of Wanda's death, after she moved out?
I was home. I was on base with some friends. I didn't leave that night.
I'm looking into that.
Sure thing, Sergeant.
So, what else can you tell me about that night?
After a few attempts, Kenda finally reaches the Air Force MPs who responded to Luther Brown's initial disturbance call.
Yes, I'm calling about a police report involving one of your lieutenants.
The officers gave Luther Brown a glowing review. They said he was a well-respected officer, and they were able to verify his version of the chain of events. He was not the aggressor. Wanda was the aggressor.
Well, I appreciate the information. Thank you. Bye.
We were able to confirm he also did not leave Peterson Air Force Base that evening, so we were able to clear him as a suspect.
So Katie checks out.
Any idea where Wanda went to stay after she left your apartment?
Yeah, of course. She has a friend named Dee Dee. Dee Dee Smith, that's the only person I can think of.
You have an address for her?
Yeah, sure.
I'll write it down.
So our next stop, of course, is Dee Dee.
Sorry to bother you, ma'am, but we're looking for Dee Dee Smith.
That's me. Is this about Wanda's death?
Yes, ma'am. We'd like to ask you a few questions about her. Could you tell us a little bit about her?
Wanda was Wanda.
Dee Dee knew Wanda was capable of mood swings. So Dee Dee says that that day, just after Luther had kicked her in the street, she was wild. She was really upset.
Dee Dee was able to say she'd gone out to her local favorite watering hole, which was the Cloud 9.
Did you go with her?
Me? No, I don't go out on weeknights. I told her to have a good time, don't be out too late, but she never came home.
All right, Miss Smith, we're sorry for your loss. Thank you.
After speaking with Dee Dee Smith, Bayans and Kenda head to the Cloud 9 nightclub. It's a venue all too familiar to Colorado Springs police.
I have covered plenty of shootings and knifings at this nightclub, which became known fondly as the Knife and Gun Club.
Afternoon. I'm Sergeant Bayans. This is my partner, Detective Kenda.
I'm Willie Hicks. I run security around here.
Willie Hicks was a bouncer in a bad place, but Willie was a military policeman at Fort Carson. This was an extra job for him. So we knew Willie was a straight shooter with us.
Do you know a customer named Wanda Murray?
Yeah, I heard she got hit by a car on Academy Boulevard. That's awful, man.
We think she was killed before that happened. We're investigating this as a homicide.
Really?
He said, well, I know who did it, man. I know who killed her then. And we almost dropped our notebook.
Willie explains that the night Wanda died, he saw her drinking with a friend named Faye Greer.
She was drinking excessively.
Ooh, so good to get out the house.
She was obviously upset about the breakup.
According to Willie, the trouble started when an Army vet by the name of Kevin Milroy showed up.
Kevin Milroy was Faye Greer's ex-boyfriend. She had broken up with him 3 weeks earlier.
Leave me alone already.
Girl, he's coming over.
He's
Yeah. Hey, I got your back, all right? All right.
Thank you.
Hey, baby, how are you? You doing all right? You looking good, girl.
He really wanted to get Faye back. He was convinced he could talk her into moving back in, and that was his goal.
Oh, and you're drunk. Look, just go home. You're embarrassing me.
Okay, I go home. You come home with me. Come on.
No, stop. Absolutely not. Look, I already told you, this is done and over with.
Faye didn't want to speak with him, kept sending him away. He didn't really take no for an answer.
Willie said that Wanda was very protective of her gender and would instantly confront a male to stop the behavior of the male being verbally abusive toward a female.
Kevin, you already heard what she said. Now get the hell out of here and leave her alone.
Bitch, this between me and my wife. Stay out of it.
Look, you son of a bitch. She's not your wife, and she ain't going to be either. Now get the hell out of my face before I get you kicked out of here.
And this angered Kevin to the point where he actually threatened her.
Bitch, I'll kill you.
Oh, you gonna kill me? Hey,
break this shit up or everybody getting the fuck up out of here.
Girl, don't even worry about it.
No wonder Willie thinks he knows who did this. That sounds awfully promising.
Willie explains that Faye eventually agreed to talk to Kevin in private. But just minutes after they stepped outside,
there's a fight out here!
So now everybody piles outside. And there's Kevin. And there's Faye. And Faye's lip is split, and she's got blood all over her face.
You make me sick to my stomach.
What happened?
He just hit me in my mouth.
Honey, go inside and get some ice. You're done. That's it for you, buddy. Man, get your ass out of here. I bet not ever see your face in here no more.
Get the out of here.
Everything calmed down after that. I never saw Kevin again.
And what about Wanda? What time did she leave?
Beats me. I'm just a bouncer, not a babysitter.
Kenda and Bayans wonder, could Kevin have been waiting outside for Wanda to leave?
So we have what we think is a really solid suspect. He makes a pronouncement he's going to kill her before the night is over, and somebody certainly did that.
The following afternoon, Kenda and Bayans summon Kevin Milroy to the station for questioning.
What y'all fools want?
Of course, he is the typical confident, arrogant, mouthy, profane guy who's talked to the police before.
We know about the fight you had with Faye and Wanda at the club. What we need to know is what happened outside.
What do you mean?
Well, you can start by telling us how Faye got that bloody lip.
No. And Kevin says, she hit my elbow with her mouth.
Okay, so however it happened, Faye ended up on the wrong end of your elbow. But you're saying that's the end of it?
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying you never put your hands on Wanda Murray that night?
Huh?
Did you choke her? Did you put your hands on her throat?
No. Once the bouncer told me to leave, that's when I left.
And then you drove home?
No, I walked home.
He says his car was damaged and was actually in the shop.
If Kevin's story is true, it would be impossible for him to have dumped Wanda's body by the side of the road.
Academy Boulevard is about 6 miles as the crow flies from this nightclub.
All right, Kevin. We just need for you to stay put a little while longer till we check out a few things.
When we talk to Faye Greer, she has a seriously injured mouth.
I'll go ahead and have a seat.
Thank you for coming in on such a short notice. You want to tell us what happened to your lip?
Oh, it's nothing. It's not a big deal.
When Baines asked her what happened to her mouth, she was unwilling to even say.
So instead, they switched to a seemingly innocent topic.
Faye, can I ask you, does Kevin own a vehicle?
He did, but he wrecked it a few weeks ago. And that idiot is too broke to pay for a mechanic.
And he hasn't been borrowing anyone else's during this whole time?
No, as a matter of fact, everyone's tired of him bumming rides all the time.
Well, he can't get from that nightclub to the Academy Boulevard in the time provided by any other means except an automobile, and he doesn't have one. So Faye ultimately confirms Kevin's alibi.
Excuse me for a moment.
Boy, I was feeling really confident that we finally had the person responsible for her death. And then, poof, we've got nobody.
All right, Kevin, you're free to go.
That nagging fear began to creep in. What if I can't solve this? Sergeant Baines and I have been reconstructing the timeline of Wanda Murray's final night. We know she spent the evening with her friend Faye Greer at the Cloud 9. But if Faye's abusive boyfriend Kevin Milroy didn't kill her, then I'm hoping that Faye can lead me to someone else who may have a motive for murdering Wanda Murray.
So, Faye, what happened after Kevin split?
Well, my lip was hurt pretty badly. This is terrible.
That looks real bad. You need to go to the hospital.
Yeah, I probably do.
Yeah?
Oh,
You want me to go with you?
No. Go ahead on and go and have fun. I'll see you later.
All right, well, I'm probably just gonna go to Ouija's, but I can come with you if you
No.
want me to.
I'll see you later. Have fun tonight. Bye. That was the last time I saw her.
So Wanda was headed to Ouija's.
Yeah. It was around 1 a.m.
So Faye said goodbye, and an hour later, Wanda's dead. Odds are Ouija's was her last stop.
Baines and Kenda want to speak with the late-night bartender there, who's been a help to police on previous cases.
Her name is Sandy. We've had contact with Sandy in the past because of the nature of her clientele.
Afternoon, Sandy.
Hey, detective. What can I do for you today?
Were you working the bar Monday night at closing time?
Yeah.
Do you remember Wanda Murray being in there? Oh yeah, Wanda was in there.
Hi. Hey, Sandy. Can you give me a scotch? Sure. Rocks. Yeah, thanks.
She was kind of quiet and she just wanted a drink.
This well-dressed guy came in and he sat next to Wanda and ordered a beer. And that's kind of perked her up. Thank you.
So, what kind of trouble are you trying to get into tonight?
Me?
Sandy says they just kind of quietly talked at the bar. That's unusual for Wanda, because usually Wanda's not quiet.
And then when I gave the last call at 1:45, everybody cleared out, including Wanda.
According to Sandy, that's when she realized Wanda didn't settle her tab.
Paul, get her back in here. She didn't pay for her last one.
Paul Morris immediately followed her outside to tell her that she owed for a drink.
Did she leave with anybody?
I don't know. I just saw her as she walked out the door. Ask Paul. He's inside.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's right. I went out to Wanda, but she was pissed drunk. She seemed to think the last guy she'd been talking to had bought the last round.
He described her as having a very erratic behavior.
Sweetie, you gotta pay up.
Not you.
Wanda rather rudely told him that she'd paid for the drink and to leave her alone.
Well, don't come back here unless you can pay your tab.
Whatever.
He sees Wanda get in the car with an individual that she'd been drinking with.
According to Paul Morris, this exchange transpired at precisely 2 a.m.
So this occurs at 2 in the morning. By 2:20, Wanda Murray's dead. The timeline ending is more important than the beginning because there's no opportunity for her to meet anybody else. She's in the company of her killer.
Any idea who the guy was?
Never saw him before, but he was dressed well and drove a silver station wagon.
After all of this effort, we have finally discovered precisely who we're looking for. Now he needs a name.
Back at the station, Kenda eagerly pours through his notes looking for any clue that might help him identify this mystery man.
Looks like college boys in early this morning. What are you doing? Studying for a test?
Just doing my job.
To go from, in my case, being brand new at this, being afraid of it, thinking, man, how are we going to figure this out, to now knowing how we figured it out and knowing we are inches away from arresting our guy, you feel great. You think, boy, I really am a detective.
But that feeling is short-lived.
I just got the report from the coroner's office.
Okay.
We got it all wrong. The guy from Ouija's, he didn't kill her.
What? If he didn't kill her, then who the hell did? So I'm working my second murder case ever, and I'm finally feeling confident we're going to solve this. When Sergeant Baines informs me that everything we thought about this case is dead wrong.
So, Sergeant, how's that even possible?
Take a look for yourself. Honestly, I've never seen anything like this before.
What?
And I almost fell out of my chair. Do you mean our homicide just became a natural death?
Perplexed, Baines and Kenda head over to the coroner's office for an explanation.
I'm sorry. We had no idea until the lab results came back. I was right about the asphyxiation, but I had the cause all wrong.
When the toxicology reports came back, the medical examiner realized that Wanda Murray was hypoglycemic. She had a low blood sugar, and this could account for her death.
And basically, she had diabetes and died of it.
There is no murder, so we sit there in stunned silence at this news.
I suspect Wanda didn't even know she had the disease, and her drinking certainly exacerbated her condition. If she took so much that her body couldn't process it, it could trigger a diabetic coma.
Kenda believes the toxicology report also explains Wanda's peculiar behavior whenever she drank.
Just stop, okay?
One of the symptoms of hypoglycemia is mood swings from action to lethargy, precisely the symptoms related by everybody who saw Wanda Murray.
Kenda and Baines now feel they can piece together Wanda's death from start to finish.
So here we have Wanda Pearl Murray, age 29. She's been kicked out of her apartment by her boyfriend.
What's going on with you?
She's morose. She doesn't think about dinner, she thinks about drinking.
By the time she arrived at Ouija's, Wanda had been drinking for several hours.
She finally winds up at her last stop, the neighborhood bar.
So?
And she meets a man at the bar, and she leaves with him.
Kenda believes that as they drove down Academy Boulevard, Wanda apparently passed out. But in fact, what was happening was that Wanda's organs were slowly shutting down.
Diabetics are at risk of hypoglycemia with alcohol consumption, particularly if they haven't eaten. Low blood sugar can kill someone pretty quickly.
Hey, Wanda, how far down this road do we go?
Until finally,
Wanda,
her respiratory system failed.
Hey, are you okay?
The clue which originally led them to believe she had been strangled.
Wanda!
She literally stopped breathing, causing her to die of asphyxia. When the breathing stopped, so did her life.
Oh, God.
And he looks over at her and realizes she's dead in the car. He panics.
Well, maybe he's under the influence of alcohol or drunk driving and doesn't want to get caught. Or maybe he's married and doesn't want to get caught with another woman.
In any case, he doesn't want a dead girl in his car. He's not thinking, he's reacting. He shoves her out of his car, into the street. He just disposes of her.
Moments later, an unsuspecting Charles Clark runs over Wanda's lifeless body.
Not only was this a tragic way for Wanda to be treated in death, but that innocent young man that hit her will forever remember the trauma of that night.
Due to the unusual nature of the case, Kenda and Baines must get permission to pursue their suspect for the charge of abusing a corpse.
So Sergeant Baines and I go to the district attorney's office to plead our case.
Nada. Even if we did win the case, we're looking at a small fine and maybe a month in jail. And honestly, we probably wouldn't even win. We can't pursue this with our limited resources.
I understand. Thank you for your time, sir.
No problem.
Let's go, Joe.
Thanks.
It was a feeling of numbness, effort, work for nothing.
I'm sorry, Sergeant. This just isn't right. That guy dumped that poor girl on the side of the road like she was a piece of garbage. We can't just let him get away with it.
He said, well, you're young and you're new. I bet you don't feel so young and so new right now. And I didn't.
Son, we're not in the opinion business. It's our job to collect evidence. It's about what we can prove. And right now, we can't prove he did anything more than a petty misdemeanor.
He was making a point. This won't be your first bad experience.
The DA doesn't want to prosecute, so it's all for nothing.
Happens to the best of us, college boy. You know, we don't always get our guy, but you put up one hell of a good fight.
You learn from cases like this.
Thanks.
You cannot right every wrong. You can do what you can with the resources available to you. Don't pursue a loser because you still lose.
But as Kenda looks back on the case, he still wonders what happened to the man who abandoned Wanda Murray that fateful night on Academy Boulevard.
I am certain that he remembers that for the rest of his days. What he did to that girl was a horrible thing. He didn't kill her, but he didn't have to do what he did either.
It's a particularly tragic end for a woman who struggled her whole life.
Wanda Murray did not have the best of lives, perhaps, by some people's judgment. But at the end of the day, she had two little girls, and they'll never get to know their own mother. That's a tragic thing.
A child relies entirely on her parents to be the shield against the cruelties of the world. But Madison had parents who could barely shield themselves from the terrors of their own minds. They were losing their home. They were drowning in debt. They were suing everyone in sight, including Bobby's own father. A man Bobby claimed had tried to run him over with a vehicle. Paranoia had become the third adult living in their household. They started talking about evil spirits. Sherilyn was spray painting cryptic warnings about dead cats on a metal shipping container in their driveway. Bobby was asking a local religious leader where he could procure special bullets to kill demons. I tell you, when people start looking for supernatural answers, it is because their reality had become entirely unmanageable. They were completely unmoored from the earth. In their desperation, they decided their only hope for salvation was to buy a 40-acre plot of isolated mountain land, drop a shipping container on it, and live entirely off the grid. It was a foolish and impossible dream for a healthy family, let alone a sick one. Let us trace their final known steps. October 8th, 2009. They load their truck at their lake house. The security cameras show them walking back and forth, pacing for 30 minutes, carrying almost nothing to the vehicle. People call it a supernatural trance. I call it the aimless, confused shuffling of two individuals completely lost in the fog of their own deteriorating reality. During this footage, Sherilyn is seen carrying a brown briefcase. That detail is critical. Remember it. They drive for an hour to Mountain. They speak with a local man who lives a quarter of a mile from property for 45 minutes. Then they use their global positioning system to find the exact coordinates of the land. At 2:51 in the afternoon, they take a photograph of little Madison standing in front of a rock outcropping. Her arms are crossed. She looks apprehensive, her mouth slightly open as if she is about to speak. It is a haunting image, The final documented moment of a doomed child. Then silence. They walk back to their truck. They point the vehicle down the mountain toward the main road. They are clearly ready to leave. And then they vanish. For 4 years, the mountain keeps its secrets. Until November 16, 2013. Hunters walking through the heavy brush discover human skulls. The remains are located 2.6 miles away from the abandoned truck. 2.6 miles of rough, unforgiving, heavily wooded terrain. I want you to use your common sense. A man with a crippling back injury and a 6-year-old child do not hike 2.6 miles through dense mountain brush for the fun of it. They were forced to walk that path. People want to push the theory that Sherilyn lost her mind, murdered her family, and then took her own life. Let's apply basic investigative logic. If she shot them, whereas a .22 caliber weapon she was known to own, it was never recovered, whereas a brown briefcase she carried out of her house, never recovered. Do you honestly expect me to believe she dragged her crippled husband and young child over 2 miles into the wilderness, executed them, and then the murder weapon miraculously evaporated into the mountain air? Nonsense. What about the theory of misadventure, that they simply wandered off and succumbed to the elements? Again, we rely on the facts. They had their directional equipment with them when they were exploring. They successfully walked back to their truck. The vehicle was turned around to leave. You do not reach the safety of your vehicle, prepare to drive home, and then suddenly decide to wander off to your death, leaving your coats, your communication device, and your life saving behind. That leaves us with the only logical conclusion. Foul play, murder. Someone stopped them on that narrow dirt road. Someone approached that vehicle and forced them out with such speed and terror that Bobby did not even have the presence of mind to remove the keys from the ignition. Someone marched them out into the deep wilderness. And someone walked away with that brown briefcase, which I would wager my entire pension contained a massive amount of cash meant to purchase that land. Who knew they were on that mountain? Who knew they had money? You look at the local elements. You look closely at a man who lived 1/4 mile away. A man who admitted to speaking to them for 45 minutes. A man who, when told their truck was sitting abandoned days later, did not call the authorities himself, but waited for a friend to go look at it, deliberately creating distance between himself and the crime scene. A man who, independent investigators later discovered, was allegedly living under a false identity with a prior conviction for manslaughter from 1997. My, I do not believe in coincidences in homicide investigations. I believe in opportunity, I believe in motive, and I believe in human greed. Someone looked at a vulnerable, confused family and saw nothing but a payday. The medical examiner officially classified the deaths as undetermined because there was not enough skeletal trauma to definitively prove a mechanism of death, despite a hole in Bobby's skull that they blamed on animal activity. And because of that single bureaucratic word, the investigation stalled and died. The killer is still breathing free air, walking around as if he did nothing wrong. That makes my blood run cold. A little girl named Madison never got to grow up, never got to escape the chaos of her parents' lives, because an apex predator in human skin wanted what was inside a brown bag. I tell you, there are real monsters in this world. They do not live in the shadows, and they do not require special bullets to be stopped. They require a competent, relentless homicide detective willing to follow the evidence to its ugly, inevitable conclusion. Until someone with a badge decides to step up and do the job properly, the ghosts of Panola Mountain will keep waiting for the justice they were denied. Humans are curious creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine, or sometimes for no reason at all. They look in the mirror and see a god, a master of fate, when in reality, they are just pathetic cowards hiding in the dark. It is the summer of 1973, in the mountains of Montana. The air is crisp, the kind of place a family goes to build memories. Bill and Marietta Yeager are camping at Headwaters State Park with their children. 12-year-old Heidi wakes up in her tent to a cold breeze on the back of her neck. A breeze inside a tent. That is your first clue that something is terribly wrong. She reaches out in the pitch black, her hand touching cold grass where the canvas should be. Her eyes adjust, and she sees a gaping hole sliced right to the back of the tent. Beside her, her 7-year-old sister, Susie, is gone. My. You have a campsite full of people, brothers sleeping in the exact same tent, parents nearby, and a predator just slips in and steals a child. It takes a special kind of arrogance to do that, a belief that you are invisible. Heidi runs to her parents. They find the stuffed animals of Susie dropped outside the slash in the tent. Marietta Yeager looks out into blinding darkness, gripped by a terrifying sense of hopelessness. As a detective, I have seen that look in the eyes of a mother more times than I care to remember. It is the realization that the world is no longer safe, that the monster in the bed is real, and he just walked out the front door with your baby. The local authorities and the Federal Bureau of Investigation arrive. They find a footprint in the dew, a rock with a reddish-brown stain. Blood. It is enough to make your blood run cold. But investigators start hearing whispers from the crowd. 5 years prior, in 1968, a 12-year-old boy named Michael Rainey was stabbed in his tent at this exact same state park. You have to be kidding me. Coincidences happen every day, but I do not believe in them. A predator has marked this park as his hunting ground. The search yields nothing. Days turn into weeks. The family refuses to give up. Marietta is a force of nature, giving interviews, raising money, doing anything to keep the name of her daughter in the light. Then the phone rings. It is a man demanding $50,000. He proves he has Susie by describing a slight deformity on her index fingernails. A detail not released to the press. A detail only the family or the man holding her in the dark would know. I tell you, this is psychological torture. This coward is playing a game, feeding off the agony of a mother. He promises to call back, sets up a ransom drop at a bus depot in Denver, Colorado, but never shows. He just vanishes back into the shadows. Summer fades. The Yeagers are forced to do the hardest thing a family can do. Pack up their car and drive home to Michigan, leaving a piece of their soul behind in Montana. Marietta sets up a tape recorder by her phone. She becomes a sentinel. In September, the Phantom calls again. He tells her teenage son that they have to wait, that he has to be careful not to get caught. He is taunting them. The Federal Bureau of Investigation traces the call to a payphone in Wyoming, but the trail is cold. The physical evidence in the campsite, the rock, the sleeping bag, leads nowhere. Law enforcement is chasing a ghost. Then, in February of 1974, the ghost gets sloppy. 19-year-old Sandy Dickman vanishes from Manhattan, Montana. Her father reports her missing. Deputies search the county and stumble upon an abandoned ranch. They find the car belonging to Sandy hidden under a tarp. They process the scene and find red flags everywhere. Melted candle wax, a nailed-shut closet, and finally a burned pile outside. Bone fragments. Teeth. But here is the chilling twist. The anthropologists look at the ashes and realize it is not just Sandy. There are bones belonging to a child between 5 and 8 years old. Susie. The monster did not just steal her, he discarded her. And who happens to find a piece of evidence nearby and hands it to the police? A 20-something-year-old local carpenter, a former military man named David Meyerhofer. He had asked Sandy out, and she rejected him. A fragile ego is a dangerous thing. Investigators knock on his door. He plays the helpful citizen. He even takes a polygraph and passes. But the Federal Bureau of Investigation is trying something new, a behavioral profile. The profilers look at the facts and draw a picture of a loner with a military background. A local man who is physically fit, who inserts himself into the investigation and takes souvenirs. They tell local cops that this man is a psychopath who can beat a lie detector without breaking a sweat. The profilers predict he will call Marietta again on the exact anniversary of the abduction. And on the morning of June 25th, 1974, the phone rings. It is David. He tells Marietta he has kept Susie, that he loves her, that he can never hurt a little girl. He listens to a mother sob for an hour. This is not about a ransom anymore. This is about power. He wants to feel like a god deciding who cries and who hopes. But he makes a mistake. The call is traced to a farmhouse right next to the abandoned ranch where the bones were found. The rancher notices a massive charge on his phone bill and remembers seeing tire tracks made by his former ranch hand, David Meyerhofer. David uses military telecommunications training to tap the line. We bring him in. We give him another polygraph, this time with truth serum. He passes again. You have to understand, a true psychopath has no conscience, no physiological guilt to measure. But a search of his home breaks the facade. We find bloody sheets, the clothing of a little girl, news clippings, a list checking off a local scout camp where 2 girls were recently attacked. The man kept trophies of his conquests. Marietta Yeager flies back to Montana. She sits across from the man who destroyed her family. She knows it is him. Her intuition is 1,000 times sharper than any polygraph machine. He lies to her face. But the walls are closing in. A few months later, the Phantom calls one last time, even putting a recorded child voice on the line to torment Marietta further. But he goes on the run, gets caught, and we finally look inside his freezer. What we find there, remains belonging to Sandy Dickman, leaves him nowhere to run. The gig is up. He confesses. He admits to taking Susie, attempting to violate her, and when the brave little girl fought back, he strangled her. He admits to suffocating Sandy. He admits to murdering the boy in the tent years prior and another teenager on a bridge, for lives snuffed out by a man who treated human beings like disposable playthings. He refuses to speak about other possible victims, guarding his secrets like a dragon guarding gold. And then, the ultimate act of a coward, before he can face a judge, before he can look those families in the eye in a courtroom, he hangs himself in his cell. He takes the easy way out. I have hunted men like David Meyerhofer my whole life. They think they are clever. They think they are invincible, but in the end, they are just pathetic shadows. Marietta Yeager lost her daughter to the darkest evil a human can possess. Yet she chose to walk a path of forgiveness, refusing to let his darkness consume her remaining light. I tell you, that takes a strength I am not sure I possess. Justice was robbed by a rope in a jail cell, but the truth always finds its way into the light. Humans are bizarre creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you could ever imagine. I have worked homicides for over 2 decades, and let me tell you something about the human mind. It is fragile. Sometimes it shatters into 1,000,000 pieces of delusional paranoia. Other times it simply collapses under the crushing weight of exhaustion. We're going to look at 2 separate tragedies today involving 2 very different women who met very violent ends because the minds of their killers reached a point of no return. Well, my, you have to be kidding me. You look at these crime scenes and you just shake your head. Let us begin in Rowan County, North Carolina. The city of Kannapolis is known for textiles and quiet neighborhoods. It is the kind of place where people know their neighbors and violence is something that happens on television. But on the 23rd of July, 2013, at 9:40 in the morning, that illusion of safety was completely shattered. A 59-year-old man named Chuck Reeves made a 911 call that would chill anyone to the bone. Chuck was engaged to a beautiful 62-year-old woman named Shirley Pierce. Shirley was the kind of person everyone loved. She worked as an administrative assistant at Tuscarora Yarns. She was a mother. She was a grandmother who absolutely adored her grandson. She was polite, well-dressed, and possessed a southern charm that made everyone feel welcome. Chuck and Shirley had found love later in life. They had been dating for over 4 years and were planning to get married. They had the rest of their lives ahead of them, but somebody decided to take that away. When Chuck arrived at Shirley's home that morning, he noticed the garage door was open. He went inside and heard the shower running. What he found in that bathroom was a nightmare. Shirley was in the bathtub. She was gone. There was nothing anyone could do for her. She had been subjected to a highly brutal attack, resulting in fatal injuries. Now let me tell you about homicide scenes. They speak to you. You just have to know how to listen. The house was eerie and smelled strongly of bleach. The killer had tried to clean up the scene. Bleach is used to destroy deoxyribonucleic acid. This told us we were dealing with someone who was highly methodical and aware of forensic science. This was not a random burglary. This was personal. Someone was incredibly angry at Shirley Pierce. We looked at Chuck Reeves. The spouse or partner is always the first suspect. That is just a fact of life. But Chuck had an ironclad alibi. He was working out of town in South Carolina. We checked his hands. No injuries. When you attack someone with a blade, your hands get wet, they slip, and you cut yourself. Chuck was clean. Then we looked at an old boyfriend named Richard. 10 years ago, Shirley had to get a restraining order against him. We tracked Richard to a local pawn shop. The man was in terrible physical shape. He could barely walk. He certainly could not have overpowered a healthy woman like Shirley. We were running out of leads when the phone rang. It was a man named Irvin Johnson. Irvin was the chief financial officer at Tuscarora Yarns, the very same company where Shirley worked. Irvin was panicked. He told detectives that he believed his own wife had committed the murder. I tell you, it is not every day a husband calls the police to turn his wife for homicide. You have to listen when that happens. Irvin laid out a story of pure obsession. His wife, Marlene Johnson, was a wealthy woman. She grew up with money and was accustomed to getting her way. But in 2003, Marlene suffered a severe nervous breakdown. Her mind never fully recovered. She became aggressive, erratic, and deeply paranoid. She developed a complete fixation on Shirley Pierce. She convinced herself that Shirley and Irvin were having a romantic affair. Let me make this absolutely clear. There was zero evidence of any affair. Shirley was a completely innocent woman doing her job. But the truth does not matter to a diseased mind. Marlene hired private investigators. She spent a fortune having drones take aerial photographs of Shirley's home. She memorized Shirley's schedule. The more the investigators told Marlene there was no affair, the affair check involved a single concerned relative or neighbor who had not seen someone for few days. Here, an entire family had gathered on the manicured grass outside the apartment. They stood together in a tight, anxious cluster, their faces etched with deep concern. Chow Tran stood near the front, gesturing toward the building. He explained that his teenage son had gone up to knock on the door, but there had been no answer. The family had then noticed that one of the windows to the residence was slightly open. Something felt entirely wrong. The air was thick with an unspoken dread, a collective intuition that whispered of danger. Too terrified to step inside the home themselves, they waited on the pavement, looking to the uniform of the law for protection and answers. Officer Weller walked up the stairs, his boots echoing against the concrete. He called out as he pushed the door open, his voice steady but cautious. There was no response. The apartment was bathed in the dim light of early morning, and at first glance, it appeared as though a hurricane had swept through the small living space. The responding officers noted that the home was in a state of complete disarray. The silent closet. As Officer Weller moved deeper into the apartment, his senses were on high alert. The living room was a chaotic mess of overturned items and scattered belongings. He checked the kitchen, then the bathroom. Nothing. The only room left to inspect was the master bedroom. When he first crossed the threshold of the bedroom, his eyes did not immediately register the horror that lay in wait. His primary focus was simply finding the elderly couple, hoping against hope that they had merely stepped out for an early morning walk or were staying with another relative. He turned to leave the room, his flashlight beam cutting through the shadows. Then he stopped. On the wall next to a very small closet, his flashlight caught the distinct shape of hand smudges. It was a subtle detail, but to an experienced officer, It was a silent cry for help left behind on the drywall. Weller hesitated. Every instinct in his body, that quiet inner voice that warns of incoming trauma, told him to proceed with caution. But duty demanded that he open the door. With a slow, careful movement, he pulled the closet door open. Inside the cramped space lay the bodies of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu. They had been hog-tied with thick silver duct tape. Their heads and mouths were wrapped completely in layers of the adhesive material. The narrow space of the closet was stained with a terrible amount of blood. In that split second, Weller knew there was no aid to be rendered. They were gone. For a moment, the veteran officer stood frozen in the center of the apartment. The sheer brutality of the scene was overwhelming. He walked out of the bedroom, past the scattered belongings in the living room, and stepped into the hallway. For several seconds, he was unable to speak, unable to even pick up his radio to call for backup. When he finally found his voice, he requested a supervisor and the homicide unit. The investigation begins. The Arlington homicide detectives arrived quickly, led by Detective Stewart, a seasoned investigator with 21 years of experience in solving the city's darkest mysteries. Even for a man who had spent more than 2 decades peering into the abyss of human cruelty, this scene was particularly devastating. The physical evidence suggested a struggle of immense violence. There were signs that the elderly couple had fought desperately for their lives, grabbing at the walls as they were forced toward the back of the apartment. Furniture in the living room was overturned, and compact discs were scattered across the carpet, giving the initial impression of a robbery gone wrong. ++ crime scene evidence. ++ overturned living room furniture. Scattered compact discs across the carpet. Hand smudges on the closet wall. Plate of crushed prescription pills on the coffee table. A discarded marijuana cigarette. A blue bandana wrapped around a beer bottle. ++. But as Detective Stewart examined the details, a sense of skepticism began to take root. On the coffee table lay a plate of crushed prescription pills, arranged as if someone had intended to snort them. Nearby, a discarded marijuana cigarette rested in an ashtray. Most striking of all was a light blue bandana carefully wrapped around a beer bottle, left in plain sight. In Arlington, gang activity was a known reality, and certain local gangs were notorious for extorting money from businesses and residents. The light blue bandana was a recognized color symbol. To an outsider, it looked like a clear calling card, a statement of responsibility left by young criminals. But to Detective Stewart, it felt too deliberate. The crime was exceedingly violent, far beyond what was typical for a standard burglary or a gang initiation. Most gang members seeking quick cash did not spend the time or effort required to bind victims in such a meticulous, torturous manner. The scene began to look less like a random act of street violence and more like a carefully constructed stage play designed to mislead the police. The legacy of the American dream. To understand why anyone would want to harm Long Nguyen and Hong Lu, the detectives had to look back at the history of the family. The elderly couple had immigrated to the United States from Vietnam in the year 2000. Like many before them, they left behind the familiar landscapes of their homeland to build a legacy for their 3 children and grandchildren in Texas. Arlington was home to a vibrant, industrious Vietnamese community that had grown steadily since the late 1970s. Following the fall of Saigon, many families had successfully adapted to American society while holding tightly to their cultural heritage. Long and Hong were no exception. They were widely known as a sweet, generous, and hard-working couple who kept to themselves and never caused trouble for anyone. Upon arriving in Texas, they established a commercial sewing business. Because their son-in-law, Chow Tran, spoke the best English in the family, he became the public face of the enterprise, handling contracts, talking with suppliers, and managing the day-to-day business relations. For nearly a decade, their hard work paid off. They managed to secure lucrative manufacturing contracts. including work for prominent national entertainment brands. They were living the American dream. But by 2011, the tide of fortune had turned. The business lost its major contracts, and financial ruin began to loom over the family. In times of severe crisis, when practical solutions seemed to fail, the family turned to the traditional beliefs of their homeland. In many traditional cultures, when a streak of bad luck persists, it is believed to be the result of a spiritual curse or a misalignment of cosmic fortune. Some families seek out spiritual advisors to perform rituals meant to cleanse a home and restore prosperity. Chao Tran and his mother-in-law, Hong Lu, began searching through local Vietnamese language newspapers for a spiritual solution. Deep in the classified sections, they found an advertisement for a spiritual advisor based in Houston. Some 250 miles away, the woman, named Daphne Wright, claimed she possessed the power to lift terrible curses and bring abundant good fortune to those in need. A shadow in Houston. Encouraged by his mother-in-law, Chao Tran reached out to Daphne Wright. He traveled to her home in Houston for a consultation, hoping that her rituals could reverse the downward spiral of their sewing business. Daphne performed her ceremonies, and for a short time, the family felt a renewed sense of hope. They believed that their luck was finally about to change. But a year later, the sewing business remained in ruins, and the financial pressure had only intensified. Instead of bringing prosperity, the family's involvement with the spiritual advisor had pulled them into an even deeper, darker hole. Following the discovery of the bodies on June 10, 2012, the detectives focused their attention on gathering immediate forensic evidence. The autopsy conducted at the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's office revealed the true horror of the couple's final moments. While there was clear evidence of blunt force trauma to their heads, the physical blows were not the cause of death. Hong Lee's face had been wrapped in 25 feet of heavy duct tape. Her husband, Long, had been bound with 10 feet of tape around his head and mouth. They had died of suffocation. The sheer cruelty of the act suggested a deep personal animosity or a desperate desire to ensure they could never speak again. As detectives processed the scene, they received a routine notification that changed the direction of the inquiry. An insurance company representative called to report that the deceased couple carried substantial life insurance policies totaling approximately $1 million. When Detective Stewart inquired about the beneficiaries, the name that came up was Chao Tran. Alibis and dead ends. On June 13, 2012, detectives brought Chao Tran into the Arlington police station for a formal interview. He explained that the life insurance policies had been established to ensure the sewing business could continue to operate and support the family if either of the elders pass away. When questioned about his whereabouts on the night of the murders, Chao provided a detailed timeline. He explained that the entire family had gathered to celebrate his father-in-law's birthday. The party had lasted until approximately 10 o'clock in the evening, after which the elderly couple had been driven home by another relative. Chao and his immediate family had returned to their own home, providing each other with consistent, interlocking alibis. Timeline of alibis. Afternoon, family gathers for a birthday celebration. 10 p.m., Long and Hong are driven home by a relative. 10:30 p.m., remaining family members arrive at their homes. Night, interlocking family statements confirm locations. The police collected DNA samples and fingerprints from Chao and every other family member who had attended the gathering. They compared these samples to the physical evidence collected from the apartment, particularly the discarded marijuana cigarette. When the laboratory results returned, there was no match. The DNA found on the cigarette did not belong to Chao Tran, nor did it match any profile in the national database. The case seemed to hit a brick wall. Over the next 2 years, investigators interviewed more than 50 people, including neighbors, business associates, and local community members, but every lead led to a dead end. The files were placed in storage, and the case grew cold. The horse and the breakthrough. 3 years passed in silence. Then, in October of 2015, a sudden spark of light illuminated the forgotten case. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested in Houston for the felony theft of a horse. Because a felony conviction requires a collection of a DNA sample for the national database, Willie's profile was entered into the system. Within days, the computer flagged a match. The DNA on the discarded marijuana cigarette found at the scene of the Arlington murders in 2012 belonged to Willie Guillory. At the time of the murders, Willie had been only 16 years old. Because he was a minor with no prior felony record, his genetic profile had never been entered into the system. His arrest for a horse theft as an adult was a single missing link the police needed. Detectives brought Willie Guillory to the Arlington police station. At first, he denied ever being in Arlington. But when Detective Stewart explained the infallible science of DNA and how his genetic signature had been recovered from a very room where the elderly couple died, the young man broke down in tears. He confessed his involvement, but he insisted he was not the mastermind. Willie explained that in June of 2012, his 49-year-old uncle, Bobby Guillory, had told him they were going to make a trip to Arlington to handle a job. Willie, feeling he had little choice but to follow his elder's instructions, went along. According to Willie, his uncle had been given a key to the apartment. They entered the home while the couple was away, throwing items around and staging the scene to look like a random gang robbery. They left the blue bandana, the crushed pills, and the beer bottle to mislead investigators. Willie had smoked a portion of a marijuana cigarette, leaving behind the small piece of evidence that would eventually seal their fate. When the elderly couple returned home, the staged burglary turned into a scene of physical violence. Willie claimed he ran to block the door to prevent Hong Lu from escaping, while his uncle Bobby subdued Long Nguyen with a blunt object. Once the couple was incapacitated, Bobby used the duct tape to bind them and moved them into the small bedroom closet, where they were left to perish. The spiritual loan shark. When asked why they had targeted a quiet, elderly couple they had never met, Willie revealed a crucial name, Daphne Wright. He explained that his Uncle Bobby was a friend of Daphne's, and that Daphne had orchestrated the entire plot because the family owed her a massive amount of money. Detectives moved quickly to arrest Bobby Guillory at his home in Katy, Texas. Facing the prospect of capital murder charges, Bobby also confessed. He painted a vivid picture of Daphne Wright, describing her as a spiritual loan shark who preyed on the desperation of her clients. Bobby explained that the sewing business had never recovered, but Chow Tran had continued to pay Daphne vast sums of money for rituals and spiritual interventions. Over time, Chow and Hong Lu had run up a debt with Daphne that ballooned to between $250,000 and $280,000. Daphne was not a person to forgive a debt. When she realized the family had no way of paying her back in cash, she learned about the substantial life insurance policies. She proposed a dark solution. If the elderly couple were to pass away, the insurance payout would cover the debt in full. According to Bobby, Daphne had provided him with the key to the apartment and promised him $10,000 to carry out the deed. When investigators asked Bobby how Daphne had obtained the key to the residence, Bobby looked directly at the detectives and delivered a shocking revelation. He claimed she had received the key directly from Chow Tran. The Ledger of Curses. On August 31st, 2016, detectives executed a search warrant at Daphne Wright's home in Houston. To the outside world, Daphne was a mother of 3 daughters, married to a quiet husband, and running a popular spiritual consulting business. But inside her home, detectives discovered a ledger that detailed the true nature of her operations. The ledger contained meticulous records of clients who were charged $10, $20, $30, and even $40,000 for various spiritual services, including the removal and application of curses. It was a highly lucrative business built entirely on psychological manipulation and fear. With Daphne and the Guillory men in custody, prosecutors focused on building a solid case. To secure a conviction against the mastermind who had stayed far away from the crime scene, they needed the testimony of someone who had direct knowledge of the agreement. They turned to Chow Tran. In exchange for his full cooperation and testimony, prosecutors offered Chow immunity from prosecution. It was a difficult decision, a deal with the devil, but it was deemed necessary to ensure that Daphne Wright would never walk free again. Chow Tran took the stand during Daphne's trial in August of 2019. He portrayed Daphne as a terrifying, manipulative figure who held absolute sway over his family's decisions. He claimed that his mother-in-law, Hong, had been so fearful of Daphne's supposed spiritual wrath that she had volunteered to sacrifice herself so the family could collect the insurance money to pay the debt. The defense argued passionately that Chow was a liar who had orchestrated the scheme himself to pocket the $850,000 left over from the insurance payout. They pointed out the complete lack of any written documentation regarding the massive debt Chow claimed to owe. Despite the defense's efforts, the jury found Daphne Wright guilty of capital murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also received lengthy prison sentences for their roles in conspiracy. For the investigators who had spent years searching for the truth, the conviction brought a measure of peace, though a sense of unease remained. While the hands that carried out the violence and the voice that ordered it were behind bars, the betrayal at the heart of the family would always linger as a reminder of how easily the search for hope could be twisted into a nightmare. The morning sun of June 10, 2012, did not bring warmth to Arlington, Texas. Instead, it cast a cold, revealing light over a quiet apartment complex where the silence was suddenly shattered by fear. Chow Tran, a 38-year-old Vietnamese immigrant, stood outside the home of his elderly in-laws, his hands trembling as he held his mobile phone. The air was thick with humidity, but a cold shiver ran down his spine. At 7:29 in the morning, he finally made the call to emergency dispatchers, his voice cracking under the weight of an escalating dread. He requested a welfare check on his father-in-law, Long Nguyen, who was 70-something years old, and his mother-in-law, Hong Lee. The dispatcher on the other end of the line tried to gather details, but Chow's panic was difficult to contain. He explained that his teenage son and his wife had gone to look through the window. They had seen everything fallen down inside the apartment. Things were in total disarray. The boy had knocked on the door repeatedly, but there was no answer, only an ominous, heavy silence. The family began to gather on the pavement outside, their anxiety growing with every passing minute. They had noticed that a window to the residence was slightly open, a detail that felt deeply wrong. Too terrified to step inside and face whatever lay beyond that open window, they waited in the driveway, huddled together, praying for the arrival of the police. Officer Weller was the first to receive the dispatch. When he pulled up to the scene, he immediately realized this was not a typical welfare check. Usually, such calls came later in the day, and it was highly unusual to see an entire family standing outside an apartment so early in the morning, their faces pale with terror. Weller approached the front door, calling out as he stepped inside. There was no answer. The interior of the apartment was in complete disarray, bearing all the telltale signs of a burglary. The living room was ransacked, with compact discs thrown about and furniture overturned. Weller walked cautiously through the space, checking the kitchen and the bathroom. He found no one. The only room left to check was the master bedroom. Weller stepped into the bedroom. At first, he did not notice anything that stood out. His sole focus was on finding the elderly couple, hoping they had simply gone out for an early morning walk and left the door unlocked. He turned to leave the room, his flashlight beam sweeping across the walls. That was when he paused. On the wall next to a very small closet, he saw dark hand smudges. A sudden hesitation gripped him. Every instinct inside him screamed not to open that closet door. But duty compelled him forward. He reached out, took hold of the handle, and pulled the door open. Inside the cramped space lay two people. It was the mother and the father he had been looking for. They were hogtied with duct tape. Their heads and mouths were heavily wrapped in the silver adhesive. There was blood everywhere. In that split second, Weller knew they were dead. Even with 14 years of experience on the force, it was the most gruesome, brutal scene he had ever witnessed. In a state of shock, Weller walked out of the bedroom and stood in the middle of the living room, unable to speak, unable to even use his radio for a moment. When he finally regained his composure, he requested a supervisor and a crime scene unit. Chapter 2, The Illusion of Order. When the veteran homicide investigators arrived, they were equally stunned by the sheer violence of the scene. The elderly couple had been beaten with some kind of blunt force object. Dark bloodstains on the carpet, the couch, the table, and the walls indicated that the struggle had begun the moment they walked through their front door. It appeared they had been grabbed and dragged toward the back room, their hands desperately grasping at the walls as they were forced into the bedroom. Initially, detectives theorized that it was a robbery gone wrong. However, the extreme violence seemed entirely disproportionate for a simple theft. Detective Stewart, a seasoned investigator with 21 years in homicide, noted that the victims suffered severe blunt force trauma to their foreheads, with markings that suggested the use of a tool like a hammer. But the most disturbing element was the duct tape. Hong Lee's face had been wrapped in 25 feet of duct tape, while Long Nguyen's face was bound with 10 feet of tape. They had not died from the beatings. They had suffocated. The neighborhood was left in mourning. Long and Hong were known as a sweet, generous, and hard-working couple who never bothered anyone. They had immigrated to the United States from Vietnam in the year 2000, bringing their 3 children and their cherished cultural traditions to Arlington to pursue the American dream. They established a commercial sewing business, enlisting their son-in-law, Chow Tran, to handle the English-speaking contractors. For a time, they thrived, even securing a lucrative contract to manufacture garments for Disney. But by 2011, their good fortune had vanished. The Disney contract was lost, and the business began a rapid downward spiral. Desperate to save their livelihood, the family sought a traditional spiritual solution. In many Vietnamese communities, it is customary to consult a spiritual advisor when facing severe crises, like financial ruin. Chow and his mother-in-law found an advertisement in a local Vietnamese newspaper for a spiritual advisor based in Houston, some 250 miles away. Her name was Daphne Wright. Daphne advertised that she could lift bad curses and perform rituals to bring good fortune. Believing she could turn their business around, Chow traveled to Houston for a consultation. He returned full of hope, but instead of bringing luck, the connection initiated a chain of events that would end in a double murder. At the crime scene, detectives discovered several odd clues. On the coffee table lay a plate of crushed prescription pills and a marijuana cigarette. More suspiciously, a light blue bandana was wrapped around a beer bottle. Arlington had active Vietnamese gangs, and the light blue color was associated with one of them. It seemed like a gang calling card, a sign that they were taking responsibility for the crime. Yet, experienced detectives began to feel skeptical. The crime scene felt too perfect, almost staged. Most local gang members did not commit such highly stylized, ritualistic murders of elderly people without a clear extortion motive. Soon, a routine call from an insurance company changed the direction of the entire investigation. The company reported that the deceased couple held a life insurance policy worth at least $1 million. The primary beneficiary was none other than Chow Tran. Chapter 3, The Long Cold Road. On June 13, 2012, detectives interviewed Chow Tran at the police station. Chow explained that the insurance policy was intended to ensure the business could survive if one of the family members passed away. When questioned about his whereabouts on the night of the murders, Chow provided an airtight alibi. He explained that the family had gathered for a birthday party to celebrate his father-in-law. Afterward, they had returned to his house, eaten, and played cards until past 10 o'clock. The police collected DNA and fingerprint samples from Chow and other family members. Comparing them to the evidence collected from the apartment, they had managed to retrieve a clean DNA profile from the marijuana cigarette found on the coffee table. Detectives were hopeful that this would be the key to identifying the killer, but the results brought a major disappointment. The DNA did not match Chow, any family members, or any profile stored in the national database known as CODIS. For over 2 years, the investigation stalled. With no matches and no new leads, the case turned completely cold. It seemed the killers had committed the perfect crime, leaving behind stage gang clues and a DNA profile belonging to someone with no prior criminal record. The breakthrough came in October of 2015. The police received a notification that the DNA from the marijuana cigarette finally matched a profile newly entered into the database. The match belonged to Willie Guillory, a young man who had recently been convicted of felony for stealing a horse in Houston. At the time of the murders in 2012, Willie had been only 16 years old. Because he was a minor with no prior felony convictions, his DNA had never been entered into the system until his arrest as an adult. On October 17, 2015, detectives brought Willie Guillory in for questioning. When confronted with the scientific evidence placing him inside the apartment, the young man broke down in tears and confessed. He revealed that he had not acted alone. He had been accompanied by his 49-year-old uncle, Bobby Guillory. According to Willie, his uncle had driven him from Houston to Arlington on June 9, 2012. Bobby had a key to the apartment, which allowed them to enter without forcing the door. Bobby instructed Willie to throw items around and leave the beer bottle, the blue bandana, and the crushed pills to make it look like a gang-related robbery. Willie had smoked a portion of the marijuana cigarette and left it behind, unaware that it would eventually lead to their capture. When the elderly couple returned home, the burglary turned into a violent ambush. Willie ran to stop Hong Lee from escaping or screaming, while Bobby grabbed Long Nguyen and beat him with a blunt object. Once the victims were incapacitated, the two men used duct tape to bind them and carried them into the bedroom closet, leaving them to suffocate. When asked why they had targeted the couple, Willie pointed directly to a woman named Daphne Wright, a friend of his uncle. He claimed Daphne was a mastermind who had provided the key and ordered the hit because the family owed her a massive amount of money. Chapter 4. The Price of the Curse. Following Willie's confession, detectives tracked down Bobby Guillory in Katy, Texas, on December 16, 2015. Confronted with a search warrant for his DNA, Bobby confessed his role in the murders. He claimed he was desperate for money after being laid off and had agreed to help Daphne in exchange for $10,000. Bobby described Daphne Wright as a spiritual loan shark. Over the years, Chow and his mother-in-law had run up a massive debt with her, which had ballooned to between $250,000 and $280,000 as they repeatedly paid for rituals to lift the supposed curse on their business. When they could no longer pay, Daphne discovered they held substantial life insurance policies. She allegedly decided that the only way to recover her money was to have the couple killed so Chow could collect the insurance payout. Most shocking of all, Bobby claimed that Daphne had obtained the key to the apartment directly from Chow Tran. On August 31, 2016, detectives arrested Daphne right at her home in Houston. Inside, they discovered detailed ledgers showing that she charged clients tens of thousands of dollars for spiritual services, including placing and removing curses. Although Daphne refused to speak without a lawyer, prosecutors knew they needed a strong witness to secure a conviction against her. They approached Chow Tran with an offer of immunity in exchange for his full testimony. With his lawyer present, Chow painted a chilling picture of Daphne's control over his family. He claimed that he and his mother-in-law were terrified of Daphne's spiritual powers, believing she could place a devastating curse on them if they failed to pay. Chow even claimed that Hong Li had offered to sacrifice herself so the family could collect the insurance money to clear their debt. Detectives found the story of the mother-in-law's voluntary sacrifice absurd, but they recognized that Chow's testimony was essential to convicting the coordinator of the plot. In August of 2019, Daphne Wright stood trial for capital murder. Chow took the stand, portraying her as a ruthless, greedy woman who orchestrated the killings. The defense argued that Chow was the true instigator, pointing out that the $850,000 of insurance money had gone directly into Chow's pocket, and that there was no written documentation of the alleged $280,000 debt. Ultimately, the jury found Daphne Wright guilty of capital murder, and she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory were also held accountable for their roles in conspiracy. Because of the immunity agreement, Chow Tran walked free, a resolution that left the lead investigators with a lingering sense of injustice. Yet, they remained hopeful that the truth would eventually bring complete accountability, believing that what is done in the dark must eventually come to light. The summer sun in Texas has a way of baking the earth until the pavement shimmers like water in the distance. In the city of Arlington, a place where communities of different cultures weave together into a rich and colorful tapestry. The morning of June 10, 2012, began with deceptive stillness. The birds were singing in the leafy branches of the oak trees, and the hum of early morning traffic was just beginning to rise. But within the quiet walls of a modest apartment complex, a tragedy had unfolded that would shake the local community to its core and challenge the resolve of even the most experienced investigators. Part 1. The Threads of the American Dream. To understand the weight of what occurred, one must first look back to the year 2000, when an elderly couple named Long Nguyen and Hong Lu made the brave decision to leave their homeland of Vietnam. Like many before them, they were drawn by the promise of the American dream. They wanted to build a safe, prosperous legacy for their 3 beloved children and their growing circle of grandchildren. They settled in Arlington, Texas, a bustling city within Tarrant County known for its vibrant and supportive Vietnamese community, which had flourished in waves ever since 1975. Long and Hong were a gentle, warm-hearted couple. Their neighbors knew them as sweet, generous souls who never bothered anyone. They brought with them their time-honored traditions, their deep spiritual beliefs, and an unshakable work ethic. Soon after arriving, they established a commercial sewing business. Because their English was limited, they relied heavily on their 38-year-old son-in-law, Chow Tran, to help run the operations. Chow, who spoke English fluently, became the public face of the business, coordinating with contractors and navigating the complex commercial landscape. For nearly a decade, their hard work bore fruit. They secured lucrative contracts, including prestigious agreements with major entertainment giants like Disney. The family felt a profound sense of pride and gratitude. They had built a life of dignity from the ground up, proving that dedication and family unity could overcome any barrier. However, by the year 2011, the tides of fortune began to turn. The global economy shifted, the vital contract with Disney was lost, and the commercial sewing business began a steep and stressful decline. Desperate to protect their livelihood and rescue their family from financial ruin, Long and Hong looked to the cultural traditions of their homeland. In many traditional East Asian cultures, spiritual harmony is believed to be directly tied to worldly success. When faced with major life crises, such as bankruptcy, legal troubles, or deep personal distress, families often seek the guidance of a spiritual advisor to perform rituals of protection and healing, inviting luck and warding off negative energies. Searching through a local Vietnamese newspaper, Chow Tran and his mother-in-law, Hong Lu, found an advertisement for a spiritual advisor located 250 miles away in Houston. The woman advertised herself as a powerful mystic who could lift curses, bring good fortune, and restore balance to those in need. Her name was Daphne Wright. Encouraged by Hong's deep faith, Chow contacted Daphne and drove to her Houston home for a consultation. Daphne performed a traditional ritual, and for a brief moment, the family felt a renewed sense of hope. They believed they were finally on the path to recovery. But instead of restoring their fortune, this connection would slowly draw them into a web of manipulation, greed, and ultimate darkness. Part 2. The Discovery on a Summer Morning. On the morning of June 10th, 2012, at 7:29 in the morning, an emergency dispatcher in Arlington received a frantic phone call from Chow Tran. He requested a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, explaining that his family had gathered outside the apartment and noticed that a window was open. Things did not look right. Chow's teenage son had knocked on the door, but there was no response. Terrified of what they might find, the family waited outside for the authorities to arrive. Officer Weller, a seasoned police officer, was dispatched to the scene. Even from a distance, he could tell this was not a typical welfare check. An entire family was standing outside the apartment complex in the quiet. Early hours of the morning, their faces clouded with intense worry. Upon entering the residence, Officer Weller immediately noticed signs of an apparent burglary. The living room was in complete disarray, with compact discs scattered across the floor and furniture overturned. He called out, but his voice echoed back through the quiet rooms. The kitchen and bathroom were empty. Finally, he approached the bedroom. At first glance, the bedroom appeared empty. Officer Weller turned to leave, but as his flashlight swept across the wall, he noticed faint hand smudges next to a very small closet door. A sense of deep hesitation washed over him. Every instinct told him that opening that door would change everything, yet his duty compelled him forward. He opened the closet door. Inside, he discovered the bodies of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu. They had been hog-tied with duct tape, and their heads and mouths were heavily bound. The scene was devastatingly violent. Officer Weller, despite his 14 years of experience, was left in absolute shock. He walked out of the bedroom into the living room, unable to speak or even use his radio immediately. When he finally collected himself, he called for a supervisor and the crime scene unit. Detective Stewart, a veteran homicide investigator with 21 years on the force, soon arrived. He was stunned by the sheer brutality of the crime. The physical evidence suggested that the elderly couple had been attacked the moment they stepped through their front door. There was blood on the carpet, the couch, the table, and the walls. Furthermore, the perpetrators had left behind highly specific clues. A plate of crushed prescription pills sat on the coffee table, a marijuana cigarette lay nearby, and a light blue bandana was wrapped tightly around a beer bottle. To the initial investigators, this looked like the calling card of an active local Vietnamese gang, perhaps a robbery or extortion attempt gone horribly wrong. Yet, Detective Stewart remained deeply skeptical. The crime scene felt almost too perfect, as if someone had deliberately staged the gang-related items to mislead the police. In his experience, most gang robberies did not involve such extreme, personal violence against an elderly couple. It felt like an inside job disguised as a random act of street crime. Part 3. The Stagnant Years and a Sudden Spark. The autopsy report brought further heartache. The medical examiner revealed that while both victims had suffered blunt force trauma to their heads, the actual cause of death was suffocation. Hong's face had been wrapped in 25 feet of duct tape and Long's in 10 feet. The level of deliberate cruelty was staggering. Hoping for a breakthrough, investigators processed the crime scene for DNA and fingerprints. They questioned over 50 to 60 people, including neighbors, business associates, and family members. Chow Tran provided an airtight alibi, explaining that the entire family had been celebrating his father-in-law's birthday at a party the Night before, staying together until past 10 o'clock in the evening. Shortly after the murders, Detective Stewart received a routine call from an insurance company. It turned out that Long and Hong had a substantial life insurance policy worth at least $1 million, and one of the primary beneficiaries was Chow Tran. When questioned, Chow explained that the policy was intended to ensure the commercial sewing business could survive if either of the founders pass away. Without any matching DNA profiles in the national database, and with all family members cooperating, the investigation slowly ground to a halt. For 2 long years, the case remained cold. The community tried to heal, but the memory of the sweet, hard-working couple hung over Arlington like an unresolved shadow. Then, in October 2015, a bizarre turn of events breathed new life into the investigation. A 16-year-old youth named Willie Guillory had been arrested in Houston for stealing a horse, a felony in the state of Texas, because he was a minor at the time of the 2012 murders. His DNA had never been entered into the federal database. But once he turned 18 and was convicted of felony, his genetic profile was uploaded into the system. The system flagged a perfect match. The DNA on the partially smoked marijuana cigarette left at the Arlington crime scene belonged to Willie Guillory. On October 17, 2015, detectives brought Willie in for questioning. Confronted with the scientific evidence placing him inside the apartment, the young man broke down in tears and confessed. He revealed that he had not acted alone. He had been brought along by his 49-year-old uncle, Bobby Guillory, who told him they were going to Arlington to perform a job. According to Willie, they used a key provided to them to enter the apartment and stage the burglary, scattering the pills, the blue bandana, and the beer bottle to make it look like gang activity. When the elderly couple returned home, Bobby attacked them with a blunt object, and together they bound them with duct tape and hid them in the closet. When asked why they would commit such a heinous act against strangers, Willie revealed a shocking truth. It was a murder-for-hire plot orchestrated by a woman named Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor from Houston. Part 4, The Mastermind and the Unraveling. On December 16, 2015, police arrested Bobby Guillory in Katy, Texas, on 2 counts of capital murder. Faced with the reality of his situation, Bobby also confessed. He claimed he had been laid off, desperate, and struggling to survive when Daphne Wright offered him $10,000 to carry out the hit. Bobby described Daphne as a spiritual loan shark. Over the years, Chow Tran and his mother-in-law, Hong Le, had run up an astronomical debt to her for her spiritual services, which had ballooned to between $250,000 and $280,000. When Daphne demanded payment, the family could not produce the cash. Knowing that the couple held massive life insurance policies, Daphne allegedly masterminded a plan to eliminate them so the family could collect the insurance, money, and pay off their spiritual debt. When Bobby was asked how Daphne had obtained the key to the apartment, he dropped a bombshell. He claimed she had received it directly from Chow Tran. Detectives immediately shifted their focus to Daphne Wright. When they searched her Houston home, they uncovered detailed financial ledgers showing that she routinely charged desperate clients $10, $20, $30, or $40,000 for blessings and curse removals. She was a woman who commanded absolute authority over her household and her clients, maintaining a cold, unshakable demeanor even under arrest. To secure a conviction against Daphne, the true mastermind behind conspiracy, prosecutors made a difficult decision. They offered Chow Tran immunity from prosecution in exchange for his full, truthful testimony. Chow took the stand during Daphne's trial, which began on August 26, 2019. He painted a picture of a desperate family trapped under the psychological control of a woman they believed held supernatural power over their lives and deaths. He claimed they were terrified of what Daphne would do to them if they failed to pay. He even claimed that his mother-in-law, Hong, had suggested sacrificing herself so the family could collect the insurance money and escape. Daphne's grip, a claim that investigators viewed with deep skepticism. The defense argued fiercely that Chow was an untrustworthy accomplice who had orchestrated the crime to pocket the $850,000 of insurance money for himself, pointing out the complete lack of physical documentation regarding the alleged $280,000 debt. In September of 2019, the jury delivered its verdict. Daphne Wright was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to the ultimate punishment of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory likewise faced justice for their roles in the tragedy. Though the legal battle reached its conclusion, the emotional scars remained deep. For Detective Stewart and the people of Arlington, the loss of Long Nguyen and Hong will serve as a solemn reminder of the dangers of desperation and blind trust. Yet, through the painstaking work of the justice system, the truth was finally brought into the light, ensuring that the memory of a gentle, hard-working couple would not be forgotten, and that those who sought to exploit faith for greed would ultimately answer for their deeds. The early morning of June 10th, 2012, in Arlington, Texas, was quiet and heavy with the humid warmth of approaching summer. The streets were mostly empty, bathed in the soft, gray light of dawn. But at 7:29 in the morning, that silence was broken by a call to emergency dispatchers. On the other end of the line was 38-year-old Vietnamese immigrant Chow Tran. His voice, trembling with an anxiety he could barely contain, came through the receiver. He was asking for a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, Long Nguyen and Hong Lee. The dispatcher, trying to gather the necessary details, asked for the names of the people in question. Chow, struggling through his panic, spelled the names out. His father-in-law's first name was Long, and the last name was spelled Wengyn. Chow explained that his father-in-law was 70-something years old at the time. As the dispatcher worked, Chow's panic flared. He explained that his son and his wife had gone to the apartment to look. They said they saw everything falling down inside, as if a storm had swept through the small home. The dispatcher assured Chow that officers were being sent immediately. Chow had sent his teenage son to knock on the door earlier, but there had been no answer. As the minutes ticked by, more family members began to gather outside the residence. Their worry grew with every passing second. They noticed that a window of the apartment was open, which was highly unusual. Things simply did not look right. Terrified of what they might find if they stepped inside, they stood in a small, anxious huddle, waiting for the police to arrive. Officer Weller was the first to arrive at the scene. He had been dispatched quickly, but when he pulled up, he knew this was not a typical welfare check. Usually, such calls did not come in so early in the morning, and it was rare to see an entire family standing outside an apartment, their faces pale with fear. Officer Weller entered the apartment alone, his hand instinctively resting near his holster. As he crossed the threshold, he was met with the telltale signs of a burglary. The living room was in complete disarray. CDs were scattered across the floor, furniture was overturned, and belongings were strewn everywhere. He called out, his voice echoing in the quiet apartment, but there was no answer. He cleared the living room, the kitchen, and the bathroom. Everything was empty. The only room left to check was the bedroom. He walked in, his eyes scanning the room. He did not notice anything out of the ordinary at first glance. He was not focused on the state of the room. His sole priority was finding the elderly couple and ensuring they were safe. Thinking they might have simply gone out for an early morning walk, he turned to leave. But as he swung his flashlight toward the door, the beam of light caught hand smudges on the wall next to a very small closet. Officer Weller hesitated. A deep, instinctual feeling told him not to open that door, but his duty pushed him forward. He reached out, grabbed the handle, and pulled the closet door open. Inside, he saw two people. It was the mother and the father he had been looking for. They were hog-tied with duct tape. Their heads and mouths were heavily wrapped in the gray adhesive. There was blood everywhere. In that split second, The officer knew they were dead. Even with 14 years of experience, it was the most gruesome, brutal scene he had ever witnessed. Shocked and unable to speak, Weller walked out of the bedroom and stood in the middle of the living room. He could not bring himself to use his radio immediately. When he finally found his voice, he requested a supervisor and a crime scene unit. Chapter 2, the investigation begins. When the Arlington homicide investigators arrived, the gravity of the crime cast a shadow over the entire team. Leading the team was a veteran detective who had spent 21 years in homicide. He had seen the worst of humanity, but this scene ranked among the absolute most horrific. It was clear that a violent struggle had taken place. There were bloodstains on the carpet, the couch, the table, and the walls. It appeared the couple had grabbed at the walls as they were being dragged toward the back bedroom, closet. Initial theories pointed toward a robbery gone wrong, given the ransacked state of the apartment. However, the sheer level of violence seemed far too extreme for a simple theft. The victims suffered blunt force trauma to their foreheads, with markings that suggested a tool like a hammer might have been used. The neighbors and community members were devastated. Long Nguyen and Hong Lee were known as a sweet, generous, and hard-working couple who never bothered anyone. They had no known enemies. The couple had immigrated to the United States from Vietnam in the year 2000, bringing their 3 children and their deeply held traditions to Texas. They settled in Arlington, a city in Tarrant County with a large and vibrant Vietnamese community, and built a commercial sewing business. To help run the business, they enlisted their son-in-law, Chow Tran, who spoke the best English and served as the face of the company. For nearly a decade, they thrived, even securing a lucrative contract to make garments for Disney. But by the year 2011, their luck had run out. They lost the Disney contract, and the business began a steep decline. Desperate to save their livelihood, the family turned to traditional beliefs. In Vietnamese culture, many believe in spiritual advisors who can help lift curses and bring good fortune during times of financial ruin or personal crisis. While searching through a local Vietnamese newspaper, Chow Tran and his mother-in-law found an advertisement for a spiritual advisor based in Houston, some 250 miles away. Her name was Daphne Wright, and she advertised that she could remove bad curses and bring prosperity. Chow contacted Daphne and drove to Houston for a consultation. She performed a ritual, and the family felt a sudden wave of hope. They believed their business would finally turn around. But a year later, the only thing that had visited the family was a terrible, unspeakable tragedy. Chapter 3, Clues and Red Herrings. As investigators meticulously processed the crime scene, they found several odd items in the living room. On the coffee table sat a plate of crushed prescription pills, alongside a marijuana cigarette. More striking, however, was a light blue bandana wrapped tightly around a beer bottle. To the detectives, this looked like a deliberate calling card. Arlington had active Vietnamese gangs known for extorting local businesses, and the color of the bandana matched their known identifiers. Yet experienced detectives remained skeptical. The scene felt too perfect, almost staged. Most gang members did not commit such highly personalized, excessively violent murders without a clear demand beforehand. As the forensic teams collected hair fibers, DNA swabs, and fingerprinted the duct tape, investigators sat down with Chow Tran. Because he was a primary English speaker, he spoke for the family. Chow explained that the night before, the family had gathered to celebrate his father-in-law's birthday. The couple had a wonderful time and stayed until about 10:30 before receiving a ride home. That was the last time anyone saw them alive. When asked if the couple kept large amounts of cash at home, Chow admitted that while some traditional Vietnamese families did not trust American banks, his in-laws did not have much money. He explained that the sewing business had been struggling and that they believed it was cursed. On June 11, 2012, the autopsies were performed. The results were chilling. While the victims had suffered blunt force trauma to the head, that was not the cause of death. Hong Lee's face had been wrapped in 25 feet of duct tape, and Long Nguyen's face had been wrapped in 10 feet of duct tape. They had suffocated to death. The realization of their suffering hardened the detectives' resolve. This was not a robbery. The primary intent of the killers was to ensure the couple did not survive. Then, a phone call changed the direction of the case. Detective Stewart received a call from an insurance company. Routinely, companies notify authorities when a substantial life insurance policy is active on homicide victims. In this case, the policy was worth $1 million. When a detective inquired about the beneficiaries, one name stood out clearly: Chow Tran. Chapter 4, The Trail Goes Cold. On June 13, 2012, detectives brought Chow in for further questioning regarding the business and the large insurance policy. Chow explained that because the commercial sewing business was in his in-laws' names, the family wanted to ensure they had the financial stability to carry on the business if either parent passed away. He was cooperative, calm, and provided a seamless timeline of his whereabouts. He explained that on the night of the murders, the family had gathered at his home, eaten dinner, and played cards until just after 10 o'clock. Every family member backed up this alibi. Investigators collected DNA and fingerprints from Chow and the other family members to compare against the evidence found in the apartment. While they successfully gathered a DNA profile from a marijuana cigarette found on the coffee table, it did not match Chow, any family member, or any profile in the national database known as CODIS. Detectives theorized the DNA might belong to a juvenile, as minors who have not committed prior felonies are not entered into the system. Without a match, the investigation stalled. Detectives interviewed over 50 to 60 people, including neighbors and business associates. But every lead led to a dead end. For over 2 years, the file sat on a desk, growing cold. Then, in the year 2015, the case suddenly roared back to life. Chapter 5, A Confession in the Night. In October 2015, the police department received a notification. A DNA match had finally been made on the marijuana cigarette from the 2012 crime. Scene: the profile belonged to a young man named Willie Guillory. He had recently been convicted of stealing a horse in Houston, which is a felony in the state of Texas. Because of this felony conviction, his DNA was entered into